Hello class. Today we're going to talk about simple interest. Simple interest has a formula, and the formula is I equals PRT. Now what do each of those letters stand for? Well, the I stands for interest. Interest is something either earned on an investment or paid on a loan. Okay. Principal. The P stands for principal, and that refers to the original amount borrowed or invested. R stands for the interest rate. And this is normally going to come to you as a percentage. But in order for us to use it in a formula, we must have it as a decimal. And then T is time, and the time needs to be in years. Okay, so they may give you the time in months, and you may have to convert that into years. So let's see if we can look at a problem that uses the I equals PRT formula. So here's our first one. It says that we have either a loan or an investment, makes no difference which one, of $28,000 at 7.9% for 3 years. So we have our formula, I equals PRT. Well, these 4 blanks that we have right here, 3 of those blanks we're going to plug numbers into, and we're going to solve for the 4th one. So in this particular one, the question really says, how much interest would I earn, okay, on a loan of, or how much interest would I pay on either a loan or an investment of $28,000 at 7.9% interest over a period of time of 3 years. So what I'm looking for is the I, so that's the part that's missing. Our principal amount is the amount that we started with, the $28,000. That becomes our principal, our starting amount. Our rate, okay, here it is a percentage, but I need, in order to use it in this formula, I need it to be a decimal. So to change a percent to a decimal, I just move the decimal 2 places to the left, add zeros if I need to. So my interest rate is 0.079. And this is a period of 3 years. And yes, I have my time in years, so I'm good. So now all I have to do is take the 28,000, the 0.079, and the 3, and multiply those together, and that will be the amount of interest that I'd have to pay on this particular loan, or how much I would receive in an investment. So we just go to our calculator and we type it in. 28,000 times 0.079, so I was thinking 0.79 times 3 years equals, and we end up with $6,636. So the amount of interest is $6,636. So that's the amount of interest that I would either earn if it's an investment, or that I would have to pay back in addition to the original principal amount for a loan. So now it says, what is the total amount paid back? So if this were a loan and I borrowed $28,000, the bank gives me $28,000. Well, that bank is expecting me to pay back that $28,000 plus the interest that I have to pay on this particular loan. So to find the total amount that we would pay back, we will take the $28,000, the $6,636, and add those together. So plus 28,000, and we end up with $34,636. And that would be the total amount that I would have to pay back on this loan. So let's have you do one on your own. So here's another one that's exactly the same thing. You have a loan or an investment of $34,100 at 4% interest for 3 years. So what I want to know is how much interest was either going to be earned on this or have to be paid on this if it is a loan. Okay, let's see how you did. Okay, first, I'm looking for interest, so that's my unknown. My principal amount is $34,100. My interest rate is 4%, so that is a decimal is 0.04. And my term or the time is 3 years. Okay, so we go to our calculator. We type in $34,100 times, it says 4% times 0.04 times 3 years equals, we end up with, oops, I think I had too many zeros in there. Let's try that again. 34100 times 0.04 times 3 equals, I did it again. Oh my goodness. $4,092. Okay, so our interest is $4,092. Okay, so what is the total amount paid back then? Well, in order to find the total amount, I take the $34,000, our principal amount, the $4,092, and add those together. And we get a grand total of $38,192 that I'd have to pay back. Well, what if the interest was not the thing that was missing? What if one of the other blanks was missing? Well, let's try a problem like that. What if I gave you this one? Okay. This one says, if you earned $480 interest on a $4,000 investment at a 3% interest rate, how long have you had the investment? So this one's a little bit different. So when we look at what we know, it says you have earned $480 in interest. Well, that 480 goes in the interest spot. And it says on an investment of $4,000, so the $4,000 is our principal amount. We have an interest rate of 3%, so that's going to be 0.03. But what I'm looking for is how long have you had the investment? So the T is what's missing. Now, what I've taught you about equations is that I can take anything that's on this side and I can put it together that if they are in common. So this one, we've got a 4,000 and we've got a 0.03. I could put that together. So you end up with 480 is equal to, and now what you do is you go to your calculator and you multiply 4,000 times 0.03, and you end up with 120. Okay, so when I take the 4,000 and the 0.03 and put that together, I get 120 T. Now this should look very similar to an equation that you've done in the past. Okay, so we take the multiply by 120, we do a divide by 120 on both sides, and you end up with T is equal to, and if you take 480 and divide it by 120, you get 4. So what does that stand for then? Well, the T is time, and it's going to be in years, so our answer would be 4 years. How long have you had the investment? 4 years. So let's see if you can do one on your own like this. So this one says, if you borrowed $14,000 9 years ago and paid $7,560 in interest payments, what was the interest rate on the loan? So you plug in the information into the formula and solve for the unknown. I'll give you a few moments to do that. Okay, let's see how you did. It says, if you borrowed $14,000, well, our $14,000 is our principal. 9 years ago, so there's our time, and it's already in years, so we write it as 9, and paid $7,560 in interest, so that is our interest. What is the interest rate? So the R is what I'm looking for. So is there anything in this one that I could put together? The 14,000 and the 9 can go together. So we end up with 7,560 is equal to, now if you multiply 14,000 by 9, I believe you end up with $126,000 R. Okay, so now I've got 126,000 R, and it's equal to 7,560. So how do I get rid of a multiply by 126,000? We do a divide by 126,000. Okay, so we go to our calculator. We do, let's see, what was it? 7,560 divided by 126,000. Hit those carefully so I don't double it up. And I hit enter, and we end up with 0.06 is our answer. So R is equal to 0.06. Now, that's a nice decimal number, but my interest rate typically comes to us in the form of a percent. So we need to change this number back to a percentage. So if I move the decimal over to the right, we end up with our rate being 6%. So to solve these problems, we just have an easy little formula that we have to deal with. Interest is equal to principal times rate times time. You will know in the problem any three of those. And what your job is to find the one that's missing, the fourth one. Now let's take a look at our assignment real quick so that we know what it is that I'm expecting you to do. So here's our problems. Here's our first 6 questions. You'll notice in the first one it says I've got principal, I've got a rate, I've got a time, and I'm looking for my interest. Okay, so what I expect you to do is on a separate sheet of paper, on a piece of notebook paper, write number 1, and then write the formula. I equals PRT. Okay, now since I'm looking for interest, you leave I alone. So I equals, our principal is $125, so $125 times, our interest rate is 4%, so 0.04 times, and our time is 2 years, times 2. So interest equals, and then we go to our calculator and type that out. 125 times 0.04 times 2. Now our interest is always going to be in the form of money, so make sure you put a label on it. And that's what I'd like for you to do on each one of these. Now if you'll notice on number 2, the principal's missing, and we know the other 3. On number 3, the time is missing, and we know the other 3. On number 4, the rate is missing, and notice it wants it as a percentage. So you're going to get a decimal as an answer, and we have to calculate it as a percent. Okay, number 5, again, the interest rate is missing. So write your answer as a percent. On number 6, the principal is missing, but you'll notice the rate is 3.25%. Well, remember that's 3.25%. So we move the decimal over, and we end up with our decimal, 0.0325. And then we have 4 word problems. Just find the missing piece. So that's what I'd like for you to do for your homework assignment. And that's how we do simple interest.